All right, so we're going to be working on more depth practice. And I'm going to open up my Illustrator document. And I had something open here before. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I'm going to create new. Now in this case, I want 6 artboards. Okay, so 6 pages there. And it doesn't really matter their orientation, I don't think. You can leave it portrait or landscape if you'd like, but our width, if I change this to inches, I want to make sure that our width is 8.5 by 11. That's letter sized. Depending on which orientation you have it, depends on your width and height. Okay, so doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to go ahead and create. All right, close that up. Okay, from here, I want to give myself a little bit of a background color. So I'm going to use my shape tool, my rectangle tool, okay, and I'm going to turn the stroke color off, and then use a light color here. So I'm going to double click that, and I don't know, I'll use a light blue. How about that? All right, and put a rectangle on all of these pages. So once I've done the rectangle on one, quick way to get duplicates, I can start to drag this, and then I hold down Option and Shift. I'm sorry, Alt and Shift for you PC users. Thank you. Just correct me, you know, shout it out, right? Okay, so I've got that. I've got a duplicate. I'm going to go ahead and select both of these, and then begin to drag, and I hold Alt, Shift. I got a duplicate over here, and I do the same thing here. Start to drag, and then hold Alt, Shift. Bam, there we go. Okay, so, what's that? Yeah. Okay, so you've got one of these, right? Okay, so I'm going to begin to drag, and then hold Alt Shift, and that creates my second one. If I Shift select this one or Control select that one, either one, then I can have both of them at the same time selected. Okay, and then I just begin to lather, rinse, repeat. Alt Shift. And then Alt Shift again. You start the drag before you hold Alt and Shift. Okay, lest I mess anything up, I want to select all of these, open up my layers, and lock it. So right there next to the eyeball here in the layers panel, lock it. If you forget how to get to your layers panel or you don't see it, you can always go up to the window menu and find your any layer that you've got. All right, now in this case, it's a layers panel. I can see that I've got it visible because there's a check mark next to it. Okay. From here on out, I want to work on a different layer. So I'm going to, let's see, I probably need to change my page so it can be seen in the video. There we go. Okay, in my layers panel, I'm going to click on a new layer icon down here towards the bottom, and I'm going to do most of my work here. All right, now we are at the stage where it says create 3 simple vector objects having roughly the same size on page 1. Don't use raster images like a Photoshop document, JPEG, or any other sort of graphical format. We're just doing simple vector shapes, all right? A vector shape is like one of these: rectangle, ellipse, polygon, that kind of stuff. All right, so I'll go ahead and create a square here. I'll create a rectangle, and then, of course, I can't see it because it's the same color. That's fine. We'll get it figured out here. Polygon. Okay, so I've got a polygon tool. If I want to change the quantity of sides, I use the up or down arrows. I'll go ahead and use a triangle here. Okay. The other thing that you could try doing is, as you enlarge this or make it smaller, you can hold the Shift key and it'll constrain its proportions and its angle. All right, so without the Shift key, I can rotate it. With the Shift key, no, it's stuck. It's stuck on a flat plane there. Okay. Now, little trick here. If you want to see the shapes, these light blue shapes on the page, Illustrator has 2 modes to view objects. If you hold down Control and click Y, you'll be entering what's called outline mode. So it's handy. Sometimes you'll lose an object, and if you want to find it, there you go. Outline mode. Okay? So, and then Control Y to get back to preview mode. So I'm going to go ahead and select my first shape here, and I'm going to make it a color. So I'll start off with a red color. I'll make this one a purple color, and the triangle I'll make a green color. You choose, doesn't really matter. Okay. So the instructions say from here, create a slight sense of depth by overlapping the objects a little bit. So I've got a little bit of overlap going on here. So we can tell which object is in front of another. Kind of center those up. I have to turn off my smart guides. They drive me crazy. Okay, so there are my objects. I know which one is in front, I know which one is in between, and I know which one is at the very back because of overlapping. And we're going to label this page overlapping. I can do it up here, all right? I'm going to go ahead and title this overlapping in really tiny text and then make it bigger. I expected my options bar to show up, but I guess I can't have my cake and eat it too. So I'm going to go down here, go down to my text, my type tools. If I don't see in my options bar showing up a place where I can change the size of my text, you can do it in the character panel. Okay, so if yours didn't show up like mine didn't show up, you can do that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and set my text size to, let's say, 48. Should be big enough for me to see it. So this will be my overlapping page. And center that up. There we go. Okay, so there's page one, all done. That was not too complicated, I think. Is anybody having trouble? Okay. Start. Drag one over and hold down Alt Shift at the same time. Alt Shift. Okay. Alt Shift. Now drop it on there. There we go. Okay. Now select all of those. So Control A to select all was an easy way to do it, and then lock them. Okay. Make a new layer. There. Go ahead and make 3 shapes on there. Mariana, can you see if he makes those shapes? Just make sure. Thank you. Okay. All right. So that's simple. All right. That's the basic way to create a little bit of depth. We're going to go on. And our next stage is we're going to copy the objects onto page 2. So if I drag select these, I'm making I'm clicking and dragging over the 3 of them, and because this background is locked, I'm not accidentally grabbing that. And I'm going to go ahead and drag them, hold down Alt and Shift. So I've got duplicates. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize these. So let's say this object was way in the distance. It would be smaller, right? Then as the objects come forward, they would get larger. So let's say my green triangle is the closest object. Then it would be the largest. Okay. Okay, so this is called foreshortening. when you have an object that is largest coming forward and smallest receding into the background, this is what we call foreshortening. So I'm going to label this. I'm going to drag this, hold down Alt and Shift, and then I double click in that text box so that I can retitle it. Foreshortening. Any comic book fans in here? So you know all about foreshortening. As the superhero comes charging out of the frame, their fist is 10 times the size of their foot, right? That's the way it works. Oh, okay, yeah, so, yeah, that's a good question. All right, if you open up a text box and you drag it onto the page, you get what's called placeholder text, sometimes known as Greeking, sometimes known as lorem ipsum text. This is placeholder text. This is a convention that graphic designers have been using forever. And the idea is that sometimes when you begin a design, you don't have the text, the finished text in hand to begin the design because the writer is working on it. So what you do is you put a placeholder in for that text until the writer gets you the text. Okay? Usually the designer and the writer are working at the same time and they work very closely together. All right. It's actually gibberish. It looks like Greek, and that's why they call it Greeking, but it isn't. It means nothing at all. Yeah, Bradley had the great idea of throwing it into Google Translate. Doesn't work so good.
Now, there are versions of it that do have
Probably.
some
We'll leave that to our imagination, right? Okay, good. All right, so that's page 2. Now we're going to do the very same thing. You grab those 3 objects. I'm going to begin the drag, hold down Alt and Shift, et voila. I have 3 new. Okay, so now with the objects selected here, well, each one at its time, I'm going to apply highlights using the gradients and create cast shadows. All right, so get a little bit closer here. If I select my object here, let's say my light is more or less coming from straight above. Actually, it'll work better if we consider that the light is kind of either to the left or to the right. I'm going to bring up my gradient panel by double-clicking it, and I'm going to set this to a linear gradient. I'm going to double-click my black and then the swatches icon here to get my green back, or something close to it, sufficiently close. All right. And then I can change the angle of my gradient because I've got the gradient tool selected. If I just click and drag, I can change the angle however I want to. Oh, I like that one. Okay, I'm going to call that one good. I'll do the same thing here with this swatch. Or I'm sorry, with this shape. Click on my gradient tool, go to linear, and I'm going to double click that and give myself a purplish color, and then change the angle on that until I'm happy. I think I'm happy with that. Control click that in the background. So control allows you to toggle on the selection tool. So I use that all the time. As I'm using other tools, I'll control click something, which brings up the selection tool. Way to work fast. All right, so there we go. I'm going to go to my linear gradient, double click my purple swatch and change that to red, and change the angle on that. All right, so I have my highlights done. Okay, my objects are highlighted. Now I need to create some cast shadows. All right, I'm going to close that for the moment. My first shadow, I'm going to select the object, hold Control, click C. Everybody knows what that does, right? Copies? Okay. To create an object behind this one, I'm going to create a cast shadow, so it's going to be behind. I'm going to hold Control and click B for behind. All right, I'm going to make this about half the height of this by dragging the top point down. Then I'm going to use the shear tool. Okay, actually I'm going to go ahead and change the color first. Double click that, give it about a mid-tone gray. Now I'll use the shear tool, and that is under the scale tool. Click on shear. Now here's the tricky piece. There's a control point right here. I don't know if you can see it up on the screen. It's a little blue crosshairs thing. If you click and drag that down onto that bottom line, that will anchor that bottom line so that when I grab the upper point here, it'll begin to drag. Okay, so I've got my shadow going there. Anybody need to see that again? Okay. All right, so are you at this point? Alberto, you got that? Okay. So I'll back up to the point where I've got a copy behind it. All right, so just to make sure, I'm going to hit the right arrow key a couple times. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I've got a duplicate behind, having hit Control B. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'll change my color by double-clicking the color, the fill swatch, make it about a mid-tone gray, somewhere in there. I'm going to drag it down to about half its height, somewhere in there. Okay, you're at that place? Yeah. Perfect. Go up to the scale tool, and if you hold it, you click on and hold the scale tool, you'll find the shear tool. Click on that shear tool. Then you're going to see the control point here in the center of that shape, right? Okay. Click and drag that control point down to the base. Okay. That means that that is going to be shearing from that plane. Now, go up to the very top point, click and drag to the right, and I hold Shift while I do that, and it constrains its proportions. So somewhere in there, I don't know, that looks pretty good, I think. Okay, we got it? Excellent. Go ahead and do the same thing for our purple shape. So I'm going to hit Control C, Control B. That creates a copy in the back. Give it a gray color. Make it about half its height. And then with the shear tool selected, I move my control point down, grab the top, and I'm holding Shift while I do this. Somewhere in here. Okay, do the same thing for this. Oops, I feel like felt like my gradient was off. I'm going to go back and fix that. All right, Control C to make a copy, Control B. So I've got a copy behind it. I'm going to make it gray. Go down about halfway in its height. Then using the shear tool, change the control point, move it off. Okay, can't see it. It's a little frustrating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this whole object up until I can see it. So I've got overlapping, I've got shadows, I've got highlights. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. Now I have depth and volume. When you add highlights and shadows, you're creating a sense of volume. All right, and now that's what we're going to label it. So if I come over here and duplicate my label, I'm going to call this volume. There we go. I would save the document at this point. I forget what it's called. I'll just call it. I'll give it the date. What is the date today? 18th? What year is it? Just kidding. All right, so there we go. All right, now we're going to copy these elements. I'm going to go ahead and center those up a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control C, and then come down here, and then Control V. Control V is what pastes the object on the page. Now I'm going to create a human form on here. Now that could just about mean anything, all right? So don't spend too much time at this. This is going to be my human form. Okay, it's beautiful. And also give this a cast shadow. So if I copy it, paste it behind, oops, Control B, paste it behind, bring it down to about half the height, make sure it's kind of a medium gray, holding the control point down at the bottom and scoot it off about there. I'll let you work on that for a minute. Did you get it, Mariana? Make a human shape? Huh? Okay. It doesn't have to look realistic. Yes?
So I'm on the part where I'm trying to move on and it keeps moving. So I'm moving the little guy down here.
Okay.
To the center.
Yes. Hold down Shift while you do that. Okay. And move it off to the right. Just, there you go. That's what I did.
You go too far.
Does it freak out? It will. Yeah, it's a little bit touchy.
One question.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I send my shadow to the back, but I can't send it to the very back because I didn't lock my rectangle.
Okay. So select your shadow
I'm
then.
trying to put this behind this because I've already selected it. I
Okay.
went to send it back and
Yeah.
dropped it behind this one. And I tried doing it again, but it won't go
So
behind the square.
show me. Gotcha. Okay, can I see your layers?
Everything's on one layer.
Gotcha. That's the problem. All right. Let us go ahead and open up your layer 1 then.
How do I do that?
Click on the little disclosure triangle right there. There we go. Okay, lock those up. And then drag that above. There you go. Yes.
There you go.
You got it.
That makes sense.
There you go. Okay.
Are you grading,
Huh?
right?
I think we're going to have to come back to you, Michael. Right, I've got to move forward. Okay. All right. Okay, everybody have a human form or close to it, I hope. I did exactly the same thing. Yeah. Yeah, that's not a bad technique to use. All right. So in this case, we are going to take our human form and scale him or her. I'm going to hold down Shift as I do this and make it about the size and location of the square back here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get nice and close so we can see that. There we go. So, by doing this, by placing the person in their shadow back there, we have basically told the eye or the brain that this character is the size of this. So this object is probably 5.5 feet tall. And that's what we call a visual cue. So let's go ahead and bring our label down. I'm going to duplicate that label. Visual cue. All right, now we're going to go ahead and duplicate the drag, holding down Alt and Shift. I'm going to duplicate over. And I'm going to unlock this background layer. And all I'm doing now is I'm going to change the shape of this so that my triangle is emerging from this space. Okay? Up until this point, our objects have all been framed within this color. Now, the background becomes a frame where this content emerges from the frame. We call that framing. How you frame a work changes how you look at it. So I'm going to change that to frame. And I see that there is a mistake in the instructions. We didn't need 6 pages. We needed 5. So we'll go ahead and I'll show you how to get rid of this final page. We don't need it there. All right, we just need 5. Okay, so there is a tool on the toolbar called the Artboard tool. Click on that, and you just click on that on the Artboard 6 and hit delete. Bam, all done. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and relock my background layers and then save it. Okay. Any questions? I'm going to go back and answer individual questions now, but any general questions about how to do this? Oh, okay. Right, I'll undo that. Okay. The Artboard tool looks like a rectangle with little projections off the upper left-hand corner. All you do is select that, select Artboard 6, and hit delete on the keyboard. Yeah. All right, I'm going to relock layer 1. There we go. So we've got overlapping, foreshortening, volume, visual cues, and framing all create the illusion of what? Any idea? Depth? I was thinking space, but yeah, it does create depth. It does create depth. All right, I'm going to go ahead and sign off of here.